Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
Salutations, everyone. You've tuned in to Dr. Judy, WTF. I'm your host, Walt Lusk, and... There we go. Wrong. Oh, they moved it over.
Now I can hear you.
I can hear me, too.
Okay.
They moved the mic over on the board. Excuse me. You've turned into Dr. Judy, WTF, and we thank you so much for doing that. I'm your host, Walt Lusk, with Dr. Judy Rosenberg here in the studio as usual, and as popular as ever. World-renowned author and founder of the Psychological Healing Center in Sherman Oaks, Beverly Hills, and the world. And she's the writer of a book entitled Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, which came out late last year, and it's on Amazon, on paperback, and Kindle. And we sometimes need to tackle some of the most serious shows and issues on the show, and this is one of them. So we're going to be dealing with rape and sexual violence. And this is a call-in show. So if you want to call in and have a challenge, and I know a lot will, because a lot of you have encountered this, and it takes a long time to get over it, to call in, and the number is area code 323-843-2826 to get on the couch with Dr. Judy. That's 323-843-2826. We're going to be dealing with a lot of issues in this regard, men as well as, of course, women, and would love you to participate.
Yeah, this is a very highly sensitive topic, and if you do call in and choose to use another name, please do so. We do love to hear from you and want to know your experience, and particularly if you've been traumatized by rape, whether you're male or female. We want to talk about the treatment that you received, first of all, if any, and what kind of lingering effects it left you with.
Because we know there are lingering effects, big time. I mean, that's no secret, and that's the part of the frustration on everybody that's involved, friends and family of someone who's had this challenge. It takes a long time to bounce back. Right. It's not easy to get through. And there's many different types of rape. I mean, people obviously talk about the one, but, we're talking about the wide range of sexual violence and rape. We're talking about rape, incest, child sexual assault, ritual abuse, date and acquaintance rape, statutory rape, marital or partner rape, sexual exploitation, unwanted sexual contact, sexual harassment, exposure, human trafficking, and voyeurism. So it's a very, very loaded and all-encompassing issue.
Right. So specifically, there are a couple of aspects that I want to bring right into this topic, which is the person that's been violated, and then the reaction to that wound and how it triggers off old wounds from the past. That's one issue that I want to bring up.
Yeah.
Because I always do. I always source things and talk a little bit about the mind map in a minute and how I see things from a perspective of our childhood wounds and how we react to them and encode them into the fiber of our self-esteem. And then when violent things happen or any trauma happens in our life, what happens is we get majorly tripped up and in this case traumatized, and then we go into a series of defense mechanisms to protect ourselves, and eventually those defense mechanisms, if they're not healthy ones or if they're suppressed ones, or they're defense mechanisms that end up being projected on other people, everything starts to break down. So I can't overemphasize the importance of getting help if you've been raped, traumatized by rape, whether you're a man or a woman, whether it was your partner or a family member or a stranger. Please get help because PTSD can linger.
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right. Right. Thank you. Another topic that I want to weave into the discussion is the aspect of acts of omission and acts of commission. So by commission, I mean the crime, the perpetration of the crime. And the omission oftentimes shows up in therapy in the form of mom didn't protect her daughter enough, or father didn't protect his son enough, or somebody wasn't protected, or even after the incident, they weren't believed, or even worse. I mean, that's about the worst thing that can happen is I don't believe you, which Walt has a whole slew of what not to say if this occurs.
We have a plethora of things which we're definitely going to dive into.
Right, and then the other aspect is that when the rape has to be kept subterfuge, when it has to be kept a secret, it starts a series of repressive emotions. And if mom isn't safe enough to talk to, if the rapist is a family member and there's a collusion to not let the family secret out, it causes even more issues. So we're going to weave all that into
that is a very dirty little
conversation.
Secret. Yeah, it's a very dirty little secret. Mm-hmm.
But there are lots of statistics on rape, and I know that we did a lot of research on it. So go ahead, Walt.
Well, one thing surprising is in terms of rape statistics, in terms of do you know the person and how well in terms of have done this, 46% was someone who respondent was in love with.
So somebody that 46% of the people
that were raped
were raped by somebody they were in love with.
Yes.
How sad.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's like almost half.
Yeah.
22% was someone they knew well. 19% was an acquaintance. 9% was a spouse. And only 4% is a stranger. Given these statistics. This is from the National Health and Social Life Survey, which means 96% of the time you know the person in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about a gun, but that their guns aren't really used often, much. So and there's a 26%, and these are of course U.S. numbers. 26% of someone being raped during their lifetime. So it's about 1 in 4. Okay, and the FBI defines rape, that does not include end of death. In other words, you were raped and you died in the process. That they throw in another category because it's a homicide.
Okay, so that category takes obvious precedence.
Yes, it takes it out of the rape category because more happened. Male rape is an issue, but there's not a lot of data on it. I mean, it's all over the map, but it does occur and it does happen. They think 1 in 10 might be male, and it happens earlier. More young men are raped than young women.
And we're not talking about molestation here, where there's a whole series of priming the person for the event.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
this is different. This is, and let's be really clear. Rape is a violent crime. And it's not necessarily about sexuality at all.
No,
it's
about absolutely not.
It's a violent act, and with many, many repercussions.
Huge. And the data is that the lower the socioeconomic status, the greater the chance and likelihood of one being raped.
And I'll throw in there, and please see if statistics support this, that when families are not together, when the child comes from a divorced family and doesn't have the pillars of mother and father to protect, then I believe that the statistics go up because there's not that, father bear, so to speak, and mother bear there to protect the child.
Right. In terms of age, 15% are between age 12 to 17. 54% are between 18 and 34. And then 28% is between 35 and 64, age 35, 64, which has a little over 80% is between 12 and 64, with the lion's share, of course, being between 18 and 54. A lot can happen in college.
Right.
Happens a lot in college. And it affects millions and millions of Americans. And every 2 minutes, somebody in America is sexually abused or assaulted.
Every 2 minutes.
Every 2 minutes. Okay, so 1 in 6 American women have been a victim of an attempted or completed rape.
1 in 6. Yeah.
And then 1 in 10, again, the statistic here is 1 in 10 is a male. So
1 in 10 is male. Okay.
now we can dive into, if you want, and you can elaborate all the different types, if you care to want to do that real quick.
Sure.
I mean, because people think that there's only one kind. I mean, the one that threw me was, in terms of this being also under the ideas of sexual violence, is stalking. Stalking occurs when an individual follows a pattern of behavior that leaves someone feeling afraid, nervous, harassed, or in danger. That's a form, by their definition, of sexual violence.
Okay.
But we have regular rape, which of course is a sexual intercourse in some way or another where there's actual penetration. We have acquaintance rape, where sexual activities that occur against a person's will by force and violence and duress and fear of bodily injury. Child sexual abuse. Dating and domestic violence, family member or intimate partner. We have drug-facilitated assault. That's one of the big reasons and challenges right now with what's going on with Bill Cosby. He drugged them all in some way, shape, or form, and they woke up and realized something had happened. Male sexual assault is the forgotten population. It happens, and a lot of times they're not taken seriously, but it can and does occur. Partner rape, and there's different types. Sexual exploitation by helping a professional, whether it be a doctor, therapist, teacher, priest, professor, police officer, lawyer, etc.
It almost sounds a little bit like affinity rape, meaning that you know the person, you trust the person,
Yes.
and then surprise, that person violates you.
And again, this is a call-in show, so I want to encourage you that if this is really ringing true and you want to talk about it, we would love to have you be part of the show. And the number is area code 323-843-2826.
And by all means, if you are the victim of a rape, then call the rape prevention
Rape hotline.
And do report it. I think that once this event is reported, the recuperation is better because then you're taking your power back. It's very, very important not to just take it passively and bury it under the rug
And pretend it didn't happen.
And pretend it didn't happen. It will show up, unfortunately.
We're going to talk about
PTSD.
that. We're going to talk about the effects in a minute.
Okay.
Because if you do that, you know, there's a greater chance, although the numbers aren't very big, we're going to talk about that too, and you're being proactive in that regard as opposed to reactive. And we've talked about that issue on the show before. And that, again, Dr. Judy's correct, is not that I'm the therapist, but it helps in all aspects.
Right. And one of the things that I find with rape victims is, and I'm sure you're going to pull some information on this, that a lot of people think that it's all their fault.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a very egocentric, meaning by egocentric, I mean that the attention becomes on the person and they make it their own fault. Because I'm going to go back to Alice Miller and her quote from the book Trauma of a Gifted Child, which is that a child or a person would rather be the bad one in a good world rather than the good one in a bad world. And when it comes to rape, that's about as violating as a situation can get. And so it's always a good defense mechanism to think that you're in control of the situation and you're the cause rather than being at the effect of. So that is a very common defense mechanism people use.
We're gonna go over this again, but I mean, things not to say to somebody is like, well, what were you wearing?
Sure.
Right? I mean, you were asking for it.
Right.
I mean, okay.
Right.
Some simple facts about rape. Percentage of rapes that are not reported is at least 54%. So over half the time that someone is raped, they don't report it.
That's huge, Walt.
Yes.
Really huge. That's like wow. I mean, speaking of suppression, right?
Oh, but it gets worse.
Oh.
The number of states with rapists can sue for custody and visitation in the event that the pregnancy occurs and goes through is 31. 31 states have the rapist can sue for custody or visitation.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm going, this is just...
So they get to rape the woman and claim that child as their own,
Yes.
and find a reason to take the child away from the mother.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really pretty insane.
It's amazing.
Real picture of mental health, the way some of these laws are written. Very, very sarcastically said, of course.
The age of women raped in Central Park in September 2012 is 73. So in other words, there are only 73 rapes in Central Park.
Isn't
that sounds
that a
low.
place that's known to
but there's a lot of people in
predators?
Central Park. It's in New York City, so it doesn't happen quite as much as you think.
Okay.
The percentage of rapists who are never incarcerated by this statistic is 97%.
Whoa.
Okay, these statistics
This
are just
is a
crazy.
crime
This
that you
is
can get away with.
Yes, this is a crime supposedly you
So
can get away
sad.
with. And then the percentage of rapists that college students think are false claims is 50%, so they're not taking them seriously. Pentagon's estimation of percentage of military assaults not reported is 80 to 90%. It's way up there. And then chances of an incarceration person is raped in the United States is 1 in 10. So that's a little higher, but nonetheless.
And does that pertain to people who are on foreign territory and
This is just
then
United States. This is
rape
just
and
US.
pillage other people that are enemies?
This
that
is
what
just United
in
States.
the United
Just US.
States. Okay.
And then last one, percentage of victims of rape who report the use of a weapon is 11%. Okay, so but rape can happen anywhere, and it happens everywhere. So it's not like you're somewhere and you can't get in trouble or that. But the effects of rape and sexual assault is vast. First, of course, there is the trauma to the body, right? You have the fight or flight, fight or flee response.
Right.
And as a result, it can take some of the time to readjust or cope after a period of this event, which, of course, we're going to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. The result of mental, physical, and spiritual effects of sexual assault and rape can permeate the daily lives of survivors, which makes it very difficult to heal.
Right.
Yeah, we know this. The effects of sexual assault is short and long term. The physical, mental, and spiritual effects are difficult to cope with early on, and it's common for the survivor to feel shaken or unlike him or herself. This can affect their mental, especially during youth when the brain is highly elastic during the formative years. PTSD.
Right.
And we're going to talk about that a little later. I think people relive it, and there's things to do to help them kind of snap out of it, because it happens.
So one of the things that I talk about in my treatment at the Psychological Healing Center is that symptoms are hieroglyphics or clues that something happened at the causal level. And so if you could please put the mind map up, I'll
Sure.
explain a little bit more.
And those of you that are listening, you can go to drjudywtf.com and see it, or you can go on your iPhone Psychological Healing Center app and see it as well.
Okay, so the top third, I'll learn to say top third. The top third of the mind map represents our past, our wounds of our past, and how we react to them and how we encode them. And the middle section of the mind map represents the chaos and the defenses and the breakdowns that occur in our everyday life. And the bottom third of the mind map represents the morphing out of our pain and the recoding into mental health and the balance that we seek on a mind, body, soul level. So if you look at panel 1 and you look at those little black speckles on the foreground, and you see the light in the background. We have to understand that every one of us carries the light within. I call that the big I. The big I is the part of us that is the full potential of who we are, and then those black dots represent what I call infiltrations that penetrate to the core and enter us like psychological viruses
or wounds. It can be
and
also
wounds, right, and crack our lens of perception in terms of how we not only how we perceive ourselves, but how we perceive the world. So if a child is abused sexually, physically, emotionally, if that child is neglected or smothered, then that sets the blueprint for the domino effect of bad reactions, poor encoding, and then the repeat cycle of what I refer to as the WTF, or the What the Freud, which is panel 456. So 456 is Freud's repetition principle, where we keep going through chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. So let's say somebody already was violated at an early age. Can you imagine the betrayal of being violated by a parent or a teacher or a caregiver or anybody, and then later on in life being subjected to a rape? And so it's just like a double shattering. So I talk about the double dungeon effect. So if a child is shattered in the sense that they can't turn to mom, they can't turn to dad, they can't turn inward because they don't have a solid core, and then the world around them is dangerous, that's a really, really scary place to live. And that's why the paranoia, and that's why the vigilance and checking over the shoulders, and this can go on and on and on for a long time if not treated. So it's really, really important to get in treatment right away so that you don't suffer the PTSD symptoms.
Well, the next one is along those lines as well, is depression, right? Sadness, feeling of hopelessness, unexplained crying, changes in appetite, weight loss, weight gain, loss of energy, loss of interest and pleasure in activities previously enjoyed. It can affect a person's outlook, as I was getting to, which can lead, of course, to feelings of hopelessness.
Right, and that's that cracked lens of perception where the world doesn't look like it has any more light in it. Because if the world if such a human being can violate to that degree, and that person is just going about the course of their life and maybe just in a parking lot or visiting a relative or living in a marriage and having their spouse turn against them in such a violent way, then it's such a deep, deep sense of betrayal.
Well, it's a huge betrayal and violation. I mean, it's just can be over. And then this is coping the effects with sexual assault and rape can be overwhelming. And and this substance abuse and drugs and alcohol, they try and self-medicate, but then they talk about the array of feelings, and so you need to acknowledge them and get help. They're the suicide. I'm sorry. The new National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 800-273-TALK.
Thank you for that.
Right.
That's
so
really important to
the
know.
Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 24/7, 365, 800-273-TALK.
And it is so important. I'm going to repeat it again. Don't implode. Don't explode. You've got to unload this stuff to a professional.
Yes, absolutely.
And again, going back to acts of omission, a lot of times mothers or parents or people around them are not the best support system, because they'll make horrible comments or they will not be safe to talk to and won't even acknowledge that this happened, which makes the person feel very, very much at fault, very, very isolated. They have nobody to turn to. So that's where the depression comes, is that aggression, which people are feeling in reaction to the violation, then turns against themselves, and they don't have the emotional bandwidth to cope with such an experience. And so then they'll try to do defense mechanisms like self-medicate with drugs, self-medicate by dissociation.
Alcohol,
at times.
right.
Yes.
Well, here, this is mentioned. The other spiritual and emotional effects that Dr. G is talking about. There are a bunch: changes in how we view trust, anger and blame, shock, numbness, loss of control, disorientation, helplessness, sense of vulnerability, fear. A couple more: self-blame, guilt for allowing the crime to happen in the first place.
Right, as if they had control over the situation. Right.
And lastly, feelings that those reactions are signs of weakness. Right. And unfortunately, that can lead to nightmares and bad daydreams. Okay, one's worldview and outlook is totally affected.
And just to speak to the affinity situations where the perpetrator is a known entity, maybe he or even she, is a sister, brother, mother, father, and rape. I don't know if you covered this, but would this be considered rape according to the statistics, where a female would penetrate another female or male with an object?
Yes, penetration with an object.
With an object.
With an object,
obviously
yes.
not with her penis.
Yes,
but,
with an object
with an
if
object.
it's non-consensual.
Non-consensual.
Yes,
Okay.
that would qualify.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So so there are various different forms, as Walt mentioned, and when you know the perpetrator, it's such a sense of betrayal, because if it's somebody that you actually trusted all your life, like an uncle or a loved grandfather, it's just devastating, because it just speaks again to the outer world. In the mind map process, the panel 1 or the first connection is always with mother, and she represents the inner world, and the launching out of the system, or the hatching out of the child, the infant child, into the outer world represents father. And so usually our parents set the bar. And so when somebody violates us above and beyond our bar, and then we go back to our support system and they're not necessarily there, we don't want to tell them, because we don't want to tell our mother that grandpa, her father, raped a family member.
And not only that, grandpa might have done the same thing to mom.
Most probably,
and then,
yes.
if that's the case,
right.
then mom doesn't want to open up that can of worms.
Right.
And she's not. Yeah. She doesn't want to go down that road.
Right. So the well-kept secret goes
on.
Carpet. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons people don't really want to talk about it, is because it opens up. If a daughter mentions that to mom, and mom has been raped as well, then that opens up all her wounds, and she'd rather just shut her daughter up and pretend that it didn't happen, or worse, blame it on her daughter, which probably she was blamed too. So you could see that everything's multi-generational. It's just so patterned, and and we've got to break the cycle, which is why we do therapy, is because we don't want to do the WTF. We don't want to keep repeating patterns. And even though rape is out of our control, what can be controlled is how we process this rape and what we make it to mean. Because if we have negative core beliefs and we have wounds of our childhood, boy, do they get activated. And by dismantling all that activation, we get to reprocess that violation, not in terms of our faulty core, but in terms of how sick that individual is who perpetrated that crime.
And if you're just tuning in, thanks so much for doing that. You're listening to Dr. Judy WTF, which is What the Freud, here at UBN Radio Network. And you can catch us on iTunes. We're part of the iHeartRadio network here at UBN Radio, Stitcher, and of course we're on YouTube as well. We're talking about sexual violence and rape. If you want to join in our conversation, we would very much love to have you be a part of it. Our number is area code 323-843-2826, 323-843-2826. And stay tuned, because we're going to shrink a song that's kind of related to this, which we normally do, and do that. So how do you help someone heal from rape? I thought we'd go in there next. First is, how do you recover from a rape assault? If you've ever been a victim of a rape or sexual assault, you may not know how to feel normal again. You may feel that the emotional pain of the rape or sexual assault will never go away. You may feel shame, depression, anxiety, fear after the attack. No matter...
Just to say that it's different from just a hold up at gunpoint, which I've experienced, because now you've got that person's semen in your body, and you've got the physical violation of the pain in your vagina or your anal area or whatever part of your body was violated.
Hugely.
It takes it to a whole new level.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. No matter how you feel, know that things will become better. You will learn how to heal, and life will go on in your normal, as you normally would. First is physically. Seek medical attention, even if you do not want to take the assault to the police. Even if you don't want to press charges right away, you may change your mind later. Do not throw away or wash the clothes you were wearing at the time of the attack. Mm-hmm. Place them in a sealed plastic bag and take them to police. We talked about this. Be proactive.
Yeah.
Okay? Mm-hmm. Believe me, they're very, very helpful in this regard. I didn't talk about the numbers of assault kits and rape assault kits and stuff. The numbers are big. Emotionally, you are not alone. 1 out of every 6 women and every 33 men has been a victim of rape. So
and it happens every 2 minutes.
Every sexual assault happens every 2 minutes.
So you can imagine there are a lot of support groups. So
yes.
Don't do this alone.
And this is not...
Get to a hospital, go to a police station, mm-hmm. Get immediate intervention. The
Absolutely.
Quicker the better.
Yes. Time heals all wounds, and the quicker the better. Mm-hmm. And the point is, people respond. Everybody responds differently. Next, the rape was not your fault. Self-blame is common among rape victims. Rape victims tend to feel as though they were somehow responsible for the rape. It's not true. It makes some time to rebuild trust in other people, and it shatters your sense of trust, and it's not easy to rebuild, but it can be done. Confide in a trusted loved one about your feelings. Don't keep them bottled up, as Dr. Judy has said. We said, do not, implode or explode, but unload. Okay? You should feel that you should be strong for other people. No, this is not a sign of strength that you're trying to hold this all in. It's a sign of strength to involve others and get some help. Mentally, it's a long and very complicated experience and a process, which frustrates you, who, if you're been a victim, and those around you. We're going to talk about what to say and not to say, but it's like, really, just get over it.
Yeah,
that's not the thing to say. And do not hesitate to ask for help. Support, as Dr. Judy said, get help. There's a lot of places. It can make you feel unsafe and make you feel not brave anymore. So you need to go get some help. Okay, mm-hmm. And the sooner the better on all counts.
And so I want to talk a little bit about our light. Mm-hmm. Our light, and a concept that I refer to quite a bit in my treatment is our curse by design. And so how do you come out of something like that better? How do you come out of something like that with your light intact? And so some people choose to grow. These crises are opportunities for growth. And maybe not the day that you've been raped, maybe not a month later or so, but some people actually use these experiences to then become excellent martial artists, or they use these experiences to teach other rape victims how to recuperate from rape, or some people choose to set up support groups or fund therapy for people who have been victims of rape. And so it's really, really important. No matter what happens to us in life, we always have to look for our light, and it's there. And so one is called being the cause, and the other one is called being at the effect of. And I know that when violent things happen like that, we're always feeling at the effect of. And it's really, really important to start looking at, now, how can I be the cause? And one way that you can immediately be the cause that I mentioned is report this immediately, because it takes your power back.
don't give any more power to the person that's done this to you than you could. Right, reporting it, yes, it might be embarrassing, but you know what? You need to be free of this, and you need to share it and expose the person that's done it.
And some more light around that is if you report the person and they get incarcerated, that's just one less person who's out there perpetrating this crime, and so you may have prevented somebody else from getting raped.
Exactly. And again, this is not something you can do alone. It's just too overwhelming. And some things that you want to say to a rape or sexual abuser is, I'm sorry this happened to you. It wasn't your fault. You survived. Obviously, you did the right things. Thank you for telling me. I'm always here for you if you want to talk. And can I do anything for you? Okay, those are the things you want to say to them.
Right.
There's some things that just you don't want to say. It was your fault. You could have avoided if you had just, it's been so long, get over it. You wanted it. It's not that big a deal. It happens to a lot of people, right? You can't downplay this. It's
not what you want to hear.
No way. I don't believe you. Okay, that's the worst thing to say. Do respond enough not to pity them. Don't assume that he or she doesn't want to be touched. Some people can't stand a hug at this point. Others can't make it without it. And I know it's a case by case thing. Do comfort them. Give them a cup of coffee, a blanket, play some soft music, make the environment comfortable. Okay. Don't try and solve the problems for them. If they had taken control, if he has taken control away from them, then you don't want to avoid doing that again.
And some practical things to do is obviously do get tested for STDs and sexually transmitted diseases. Maybe consider taking that morning after pill if you don't want to risk pregnancy, and depending on your philosophy about birth control, or I know that gets really complicated, but whatever your choices are, exercise your choices. So again, you're in as much control of the situation as possible. It's also age dependent, isn't it? It's different if a 6-year-old child gets raped versus a fully matured adult. Just in terms of physically, a 6-year-old child's body cannot take such violent abuse, and so there's going to be internal damage, and of course there's going to be the ripping of the hymen, some bleeding if it's anal or vaginal penetration, and so there's going to be a need to attend to
medical attention
to the medical piece of this, right?
Then lastly, there are many times are panic attacks. They're reliving, having a sort of a flashback of what occurred.
Right.
And you want to remind them where they are, ask them to sit down and place their feet on the floor and describe their surroundings. Okay, so they're not back where they were. Remind them to take deep breaths. And lastly, if they have medication to deal with this, I might suggest they take it. Yeah,
my philosophy on medication is that it's a really nice little emotional cast when needed, not to be overused, not to be the main way to deal with feelings. However, there are some things that are truly out of our emotional ability to cope, and if you need something to calm you down, then take something to calm you down until you rebalance. Then there's the chaos that ensues within the family. So if a wife has been raped by another, it may be very, very difficult on the husband and the family and the children because, number one, she's experiencing PTSD and she may not be able to be emotionally present. And secondly, she may not want to engage in sexual intercourse or any form of intimacy with the husband. So for the husband to force the issue, or for a boyfriend to force the issue when the person is still in that very early stage of recovery from such an event, is going to further alienate that person, and it'll be a real human disconnect because it'll really emphasize that wound, that it's my needs over your needs, which is what a rape is about too, is that person's need to violate, that person's need to project their power and control over another person. So it's really, really important to stay tight in your communication. And for those of you who don't know, I have a copy of the Peaceful Healing Dialogue, a way to communicate to people and not blow the communication bridge with each other, up on my website at drjudywtf.com. It's in the resources section. It's free. You can download it. It's also in the book, Be the Cause.
Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect. And also if you have the app, Psychological Healing Center on your iPhone, it's there as well. It's one page. It's got lots of color. And you don't have to use the whole thing, but it's a really good guide to have a conversation.
Right, a conversation.
Or conversations.
Yes, that's connecting rather than disconnecting, that is centered around empathic communication designed to heal.
Just to recap, remember that we often take a lot of responsibility for our abuse, but it can't be taken away, okay? Don't shame the survivor at all. It may take years to do this. Survivors don't want your pity. And they may have other memories that are cropped up as a result of this event. And you just have to be patient. And talking about it means breaking the secret. We've already talked about that.
Right.
Many of us are faced with the terror of breaking the secret every time we talk about the abuse.
I think one other point that I wanted to bring up is feelings of ambivalence, because if it's a family member, a father, a grandfather, somebody close to you, a brother, then I think it's one of the hardest things to deal with is when you love somebody and then you feel tremendously violated. What do you do with those feelings? And
what do you do and who can you talk to?
Who can you talk to?
Yeah, who can you turn to?
You can't necessarily talk to your mother or father, because if it's your brother that raped you, well, that's really, really complicated. But I hope you do talk to your mother and father if that's the case, because that brother needs to be in treatment. And don't forget, that person that's doing this kind of violation is very, very mentally unstable. So that person has his or her own set of wounds that need to be addressed. So if they don't end up in jail, which many people... Well, not that many people do. You said 97%
Well,
don't.
they end up in jail and they go through the whole process. But the bottom line is, are they incarcerated?
Okay.
It actually goes all the way through incarceration, right?
Got it.
So the net result hopefully is they're going to be put away for a long time. Unfortunately, just how the whole process works, it doesn't happen as often as people hope.
Well, hopefully the rapist will get treatment, him or herself, and it wouldn't surprise anyone if that person had a history of being sexually abused, violated, and that's how these things get multi-generationally passed on.
So if you have a question, comment, you want some of our notes, please write us at info@drjudywtf. And or if you want to talk to Dr. Judy about it, you can go to drjudywtf.com and you can talk to her or one of her therapists,
right?
Even if it's on the phone or through Skype or in person. And her book is a great resource for this as well.
Yeah, and I have a beautiful team of interns and psych assistants who are trained in the mind map system, and they are really, truly talented people. They're all working on their master's, PhD. I have one coming into the system who has a PhD, and we do offer sliding scale fees, so we try not to turn anybody down. And so please do reach out and call. We do a lot of teletherapy, and of course, if you're in the LA area, that makes it really easy. And definitely do reach out.
Because this is an issue that really does need some assistance. Okay, so now we're going to do our Shrink That Tune, and this was picked. It's by a group, Sublime, and it's called Date Rape.
Right.
So I'm going to read the lyrics, and we're going to wade through this. Let me tell you about a girl I know. Had a drink about an hour ago, sitting in the corner by herself in a bar in downtown hell. She heard a noise. She looked through the door and saw a man she'd never seen before. Light skin, light blue eyes, a double chin, and plastic smile. Well, her heart raced as he walked in the door and took an empty seat next to her at the bar.
Well, it's interesting because this is describing her gut level reaction. And if you have a gut feeling that something's wrong, well, get the hell out of there. You don't have to justify it. And so it seems like what she's going to be flashing back on is light skin, blue eyes, a double chin, and a plastic smile. And, and so here she is. She's vulnerable. It's almost like prey, sitting in a corner in a bar, meaning that she's going to be drinking, and her resolve will be pretty low, and her ability to fight back will be pretty low.
My brand new car is parked right outside. Have you like to go for a ride? And she said, wait a minute, I have to think. He said, that's fine. May I please buy you a drink? One drink turns into 3 or 4, and they left to go into his car, and they drove away someplace really far. Now, babe, the time has come. How you like to have a little fun? And she said, if you could only please be on our way, I will not run.
Right. So now it's too late. She's out of control. It's been 3-4 drinks, and getting in the car is kind of the kiss of death, isn't it?
Well, and also if you have that much to drink, your judgment has been impaired as well.
Yeah, totally. But she's still thinking. She says, let me think, right? And if you please be on your way, I will not run. So let's make a deal. Just get the hell out of here. And
That's when things got out of control. She didn't want to. He had his way. She said, let go. He said, no way. Come on, babe. It's your lucky day. Shut your mouth. We're gonna do it my way. Come on, babe. Don't be afraid. It wasn't for date rape. If it wasn't for date rape, I'd never get laid.
Yeah, what a loser. What a sore loser. He probably doesn't have any social skills whatsoever. And so that's his way of gaining full power and control. And don't forget, the more powerfully forceful an individual is, the less powerful they feel at their core of their being.
Yes.
So this guy has a
total
really
facade.
low
Yeah,
self-esteem.
it's total facade. He finished up and started the car. He turned around and drove back to the bar. He said, now, babe, don't be sad. In my opinion, you weren't half bad. She picked up a rock, threw it at the car, hit him in the head. Now he's got a big scar. Come on, party people. Won't you listen to me? Date rape story.
Wow. Well, she did try to fight back. And so, speaking of trying to get her power back, but once you start going down that rabbit hole of drinking too much, and I think you had a list of drugs that are the date rape drugs.
I did. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah,
and,
this is a pretty long list.
It's a very long
right.
list.
Alcohol is one of them, and I think all those lorazepam, Klonopin, and Xanax, and those things really lessen your resolve.
The next day, she went to her drawer, looked up her local attorney at law, went to the police and filed a police report, and then she took the guy's ass to court. Well, the day he stood in front of the judge, he screamed, "She lies, that little slut." The judge knew that he was full of shit, and he gave him 25 years, and now his heart is filled with tears.
Well, she's getting her revenge. So there she is getting her power back, and he's trying to blame her, and the judge is not going for it. So there's an example of a song where the justice system is working.
Does work.
Yeah.
One night in jail, it was getting late. He was butt raped by a large inmate, and he screamed, but the guards paid no attention to his cries.
Little karma there.
You think? That's when things got out of control. The moral of the date rape story, it does not pay to be drink and horny. But that's the way it had to be. They locked him up and threw away the key. Well, I can't take a pity on a man of his kind, even though he now takes it in the behind.
Wow, what a revenge fantasy song that is.
And then last stanza, but that's the way it had to be. They locked him up and threw away the key. Well, I can't pity on a man of his kind, even though he now takes in the behind. Date rape.
She didn't want to take it.
She didn't want to take it.
No, and now he's taking it.
Yes, he is.
Every day behind
indeed.
bars.
And that is our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching, for listening, for liking us on Facebook, for subscribing to us on YouTube, for checking us on iHeartRadio or here at Universal Broadcasting Network. I'm Walt Lusk, your host. Dr. Judy Rosenberg in studio as well. And we're going to close out with our song. Until next time, God bless everyone. Gotta hit this. And here we go. Take care.